Did you hear the one about the Englishman, the Irishman and the Scotsman? Well, we've got 3 Scotsmen, 1 Irishman and an Englishman, and that Ulsterman is on pole position. That's Mark Farmer, number 9. He's based in Crawley in Sussex, but the 28-year-old Ulsterman came good in '88 after a fairly rubbishy 1986 and '87 season. Rode Aldridge machinery in those 2 years, but now he's changed his camps and pole position here at Snetterton on the 600. It'll be interesting to see if he can sustain that, because he's in hot company on the front row. 15 laps the distance for the 600 Supersports. Traditionally a very close-fought class indeed. Steve Ives, number 2 in last year's series, is actually on the 2nd row. It'll be interesting to see whether Steve Ives can force his way through. Last year's championship winner, John Reynolds, is not contesting the 600 series this year, and I only suspect that maybe Kawasaki took the decision not to enter a 600 bike. So minus the championship current champion, Steve Ives has to be the man most fancied, but also watch for number 5, Brian Morrison, in the middle of the front row. It's a very open class. Steve Parrish will tell us a little bit about the rules of the class as they head down towards the first turn.
Well, ostensibly, these machines start out as road bikes. They run standard chassis, standard engine casings, but you can modify them internally. So they really get the horsepower up from a standard bike, which would be producing about 80 brake horsepower, to something like 105. So for a 600cc machine, changing you can polish and lighten parts inside of the engine, you can change the exhaust systems. And so really it's a road bike, but with a bit of work done on it. So that really opens it up for the tuners to be able to play around.
Well, I'm looking at the picture, Steve, and there was a man there moving through into 4th place, and that obviously was very well tuned indeed, because he was doing it on pure speed. But you can see just how close all these fellas are, and there's a faller there. In fact, 2 go down, but they're up just as quickly, running to pick the bike up if they possibly can, to see if they can get back in the action. But they have to get the bike clear of the track so that it doesn't dump any oil.
That was Grant Goodings, number 57 there.
And all very hectic. They're down at the right-hander, riders and bikes sliding in all directions. Everyone up, safe and well. Waiting to pick up the leader as they go over the line for the first time. It's number 9, Mark Farmer, the pole position man. So Farmer already a very healthy lead from Alan Batson, who almost threw it away, runs wide, he put a foot down, he's on the grass. He has to keep it in a straight line. Alan Batson heading for the gravel, but stays on it. Well, that was a heart-stopping moment.
That was pretty horrendous. As he went in, he locked the rear end up. It was either too much rear brake or he went down too many gears, but he certainly set off across that field faster than any tractor's ever gone across there. He was a 90-mile-an-hour motocrosser then.
He did very well. I'm sorry I'm laughing, but he did very well to hold on to that, didn't he?
He really did. But that's really opened it up for Mark Farmer. Mark Farmer qualified actually a second quicker than anyone else here today, so he's now been given about 4 seconds because Alan Batson's little off-circuit trip.
So Mark Farmer then now well in the lead of this first round of the Shellows 600cc Supersport Supercup here at Snetterton. Oh, a glorious afternoon, and that was a very heavy fall indeed. A lot of dust and debris.
Now that was a case of too much throttle coming out the corner. It was a high side situation, losing traction from the rear wheel. The machine slides sideways and flicks you over the high side.
Well, the race going on, so plenty of activity. They're very well strung out, but there's still lots of battling going on further down the order. The problem is, of course, racing with road tyres, street tyres, is that they obviously have limitations to their adhesion. They are a treaded tyre, so there's no way that anybody can really push them to racing limits. But there was a hand in the air there from number 9, Mark Farmer. I was a little bit puzzled as to what that was all about.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's maybe oil on the circuit and Mark Farmer's after the race to be stopped, because there's a lot of foolers at the moment, and I'm just wondering whether or not that, yes, we have a stopped race. There is a red flag, so I think there must be oil on the circuit somewhere.
Back with the restart of the 600cc race, which will be over the full 15-lap distance. A depleted field, at least 9 people aren't making the grid, the most notable of which, number 62, Alan Batson, who ran across the grass. But a flying start from the third row for Jim Moody, number 4, on the very vivid, dare I call it purple? Well, it's not, it's a sort of a lilac colour bike, now in third place. That was a cracking start.
Yeah, I must have a feeling that he could even be penalised for that, because he was moving well before the green light and he got a flyer there. So we could see that Jim Moody gets a penalisation for that.
Well, let's hope they all stay on 2 wheels this time. The 600's well underway, halfway round lap 1. Moody in third place and looking to snatch second. Could it be, Steve, that they might black flag him, or would they let him know at the end of the race? No, I don't think
they would. What they would normally do is just inform his pit crew what's happened, and it would be up to them to do so. But I'm not saying that's a definite, but there is a possibility. But it looks like Mark Farmer's taken the lead.
Farmer then out in front. Number 9, the man who was on pole position, has resumed his rightful place. But there's Jim Moody, the man who shot through from the third row, drove through the gap and led all the way up the straight, but he was past going into Rich's corner on lap 1. Already a bit of activity. Phil Borley from Southend being forced to sit up there. Just been informed that Jim Moody, number 4, will be debited a 20-second penalty for jumping the start. So he was just a little bit keen and a bit quick off the mark there. Number 30 squeezing through on the inside of Jim Moody. Jeff Baldock from Louth in Lincolnshire. We're with Baldock now. What a super ride he's having. A lot of new names again in the 600 Supersport class, Steve. Is this a natural progression from club racing?
Yeah, the Supersport class is very good for that. Again, a relatively cheap class, not quite as cheap or inexpensive as the 400 class, but yes, it's a great chance for people to get out on equal machinery with the better riders and prove that they're worth their salt. And here we've got a man that's certainly doing that. That's Mark Farmer, being followed very closely by Brian Morrison. That's as far up the front we've seen Brian Morrison here today. He's riding the 600 Yamaha, as is Mark Farmer.
Curve they're approaching now. Mark Farmer, the Ulsterman from Crawley in Sussex, and that's a contradiction in terms, but what I mean is he's relocated to Crawley in Sussex. He is leading from the Fife Bombshell. Kirkcaldy he comes from. Brian Morrison, number 2. Then it's Jim Moody from Glasgow. Then it's Baldock, number 30, and Phil Borley. And we have a story to tell about Phil Borley, who's currently sitting in 5th place. Steve had some problem, did he not, with his engine?
Yeah, he had to change his engine after qualifying yesterday, where he got himself a good grid position. His engine started making strange noises, so they switched engines to a virtually bog-stock standard road machine at the moment. So he has a very standard engine, and he thought it was going to be extremely slow, but it doesn't prove to be that bad at the moment. So on a fairly standard engine, which, as I said earlier, they are allowed to modify the internals of these engines to blueprint them to make them give more horsepower and increase them by about 20 brake horsepower.
Well, Phil Borley now is really piling on the coals. He's closing dramatically on number 30, and number 30 again, I remind you, is Jeff Baldock. Well, Phil Borley has campaigned the 600 class in Europe and is an accomplished 600 Supersport rider. He has won Super Cup rounds, so he's very capable of winning this one. And just look at Phil Borley on that second-hand engine, and I use the term very loosely. They've certainly had it to bits at least twice today. It's not the best engine he possesses, but it certainly seems adequate for this course.
Yeah, and he's also making up with his riding ability to ride around the outside of someone at Coram Curve. Takes a lot of bravery and a lot of skill, because he managed to get away with it, but he's charging on the turns.
Phil Borley then into 3rd place, number 6, but ahead of him it's Morrison. Borley still hasn't got away from number 30, Jeff Baldock, who's continuing to keep the pressure on, and Baldock campaigns a Honda. This series 4 years ago was a one-make series, the Honda CBR Challenge. Well, since then it's become the 600 Supersport series, and that's really opened it up to the Yamahas, which are phenomenally quick. The Honda still is very fast, but the Yamahas are quick. The Kawasaki of John Reynolds won it last year, but there's not a Kawasaki to be seen. So it must be, Steve, that Kawasaki don't have a suitable 600 this year.
Yeah, I think last year that John Reynolds' riding ability made up possibly for the uncompetitiveness of the Kawasaki. He really rode it very, very hard. But as I said earlier, each class often opens up each year a different class of motorcycle. Last year it was totally dominated by Yamaha. Now the Hondas are coming back motorcycle manufacturers, but for the tyre companies to get into it, you have a major amount of backup between Avon, Dunlop, Pirelli, Metzler. All the major tyre manufacturers are able to produce road tyres that can be seen raced on the track here.
Race leader, number 9, Mark Farmer, on an immaculately prepared, immaculately turned out rig. He's looking in superb condition, he's riding beautifully, and more than justifying the involvement of the Harris Performance team who entered him for this season. So Mark Farmer, well, he surprised us with his pole position, 28 years of age, but he's more than justifying it, and absolutely nobody can challenge him. Morrison is trying, but he seems to have no answer. Phil Borley, meanwhile, is still there in 3rd. Baldock still 4th. And the front row man, McPherson, Gary Weston in 6th place, number 7, fought his way up from the 2nd row. And I mentioned at the time to our co-commentator here, Steve Parrish, that Gary Weston could easily get a flyer from the 2nd row. Well, he's in 6th place, so it seemed as though he did just that. Yeah, with the absence of the pole position man, he was able to just nip through there, and it certainly helped him on his way. There he is, number 7, Gary Weston. From Ashford in Kent, Gary, last season or the season before, sponsored by Cat Motorcycles. Well, this time it's John Harris, motorcycle dealer down there in Sussex. Number 48 in your picture now, that's Ian McPherson. He was on the front row. He, in fact, qualified 1:17. He was 4th fastest, 1:17.1. So McPherson in 5th place, right behind Baldock. Baldock, I have to say, is the surprise, because Baldock came through from looking down the 4th row, so that's an amazing position. How can it be, Steve, that from the 4th row, a relatively unheard of competitor can sit in 4th place? Well, often, in fact, from the 4th row, you're not seen by the judges to jump the start, so it's often a case on the 4th row you can get a bit of a roll on at the start and not get picked up as others do on the front row. So he's maybe got the thing rolling, but it's a lot down to practice. People need to practice their starts as much as they need to practice their racing. Well, we're looking at him now, Jeff Baldock from Louth in Lincolnshire on the 600 Honda, and he's doing a beautiful job here in 4th place. He's got Brian Morrison ahead of him because Phil Borley has slipped past Morrison. The computer telling us here that Borley is now up to 2nd place, and that is an incredible performance. And it's indeed the case, because they've just gone past the start-finish straight, and I can see Phil Borley is now about 4 or 5 machine lengths behind the race leader. So this is Borley, number 6. The race really hotting up. They've obviously screwed this bike together well, Steve. And Borley now, previously a race winner, could easily be one again. Yeah, he's on the charge now, and he set the fastest lap at 1:16.52, which is virtually the same as the pole position time set by Mark Farmer, and that's going very fast in the race. You often don't see the pole position times equal during a race, but Phil Borley is charging. Well, winner of the Mallory Park round last year, Phil Borley would have had a much better overall result than his number 6 implies, had he not fallen off in some of the others. I mean, the object of the exercise is to stay on the bike, and Phil Borley is really a force to be reckoned with in 600, so long as he stays on, and he could easily sneak the win here, because Mark Farmer has had a super run, but he's under real pressure now. Number 24 in your picture, just briefly, was Andrew Murphy from Brough. Now, he's in 6th place. He's got past Gary Weston. So Andy Murphy, too. York Suzuki Centre provide the hardware, and he's motoring on, having relegated Weston. In fact, number 20 has come past as well. That's Roger Milne has got past Gary Weston. So Gary Weston now slipping backwards. Steve, this is not the fairing bashing affair we've seen in 600s, but I suspect that Snetterton, being such a wide, strung-out, fast circuit, isn't really an ideal 600 Supersport circuit. No, this is actually quite a sedate race that we've been used to in the 600cc class. So I think maybe the start of the seasons, the riders have decided to have a bit more respect for each other, but they're feeling their way in. But yeah, you're right, Snetterton is quite a wide, fast circuit. They've got a chance to make up ground down the straight, and a nice pass there, a lovely executed move there by number 20, but he went wide. Roger Milne, he came in there fast and went out slow, often the case. Batson, number 48, still motoring on. He's in 4th place. He's right behind his fellow countryman, McPherson. As I speak, I've put the kiss of death on him. He goes down, but he's up and well, walks away, very despondent. Everybody behind him moves up a place. He was right on the back wheel, and very lucky for Brian Morrison, he didn't collect it.
Yeah, I don't think Brian Morrison would have liked to have seen that. He'll probably see the skid marks when he comes around the next lap, but really just went in there a little bit hot, too much front brake, and it just laid the bike down, which is a much lighter and easier way of going down than a high side situation. So it's just a little bit too much front brake.
The race leader, number 9, Mark Farmer, very well aware that just half a second behind him is Phil Borley from Southend-on-Sea. Now that gap is a little bit wider, so maybe the computer here just giving us a false picture, but no, it's pretty close now. Mark Farmer, very swift going into the S's. As Borley exits, he flicks it up now towards the 85 miles an hour bomb hole, right-handed out of 3rd gear, up towards Coram Curve. Coram Curve now, the fast sweeping right-hander, and look at Borley. He's right there, looming large behind Mark Farmer's bike. And these two now are pulling away. Morrison is still in 3rd, but there's nothing compared to these two. They're having a great battle, and they're sprinting towards the start-finish line to complete yet another lap. Borley with a head down, and also Farmer into Rich's corner. Borley just biding his time. It seems to me, Steve, that Phil Borley moved his way up fairly steadily. He could well be pacing himself.
Yeah, the way he came through the pack and caught Mark Farmer so quickly, it does tend to indicate that he's maybe decided to sit back behind Mark Farmer from even a lap or 2 laps at the end of the race and then make his charge. But Mark Farmer doesn't look at all troubled. He doesn't look hurried. In fact, less so than Phil Borley, who is really fighting that machine. Here we see number 20, Roger Mill, down the Revitt Straight.
Mill then, number 20. So Mill sitting in 5th place at the moment. Right behind him is Andy Murphy. There you have the top 6. It's still the Farmer-Borley battle going strong at the top of the race. Morrison and Baldock equally locked in a tooth-and-nail struggle. And Mill and Murphy for the other places, and we're with them now. Number 20, Roger Mill from Aldborough on the 600 Yamaha, then Andy Murphy, and right with them still Gary Weston, who's far from giving up. Then it's Stephen Tomes, number 11. Then it's Adrian Squirrel, and number 29, completing the top 10, is Phil Grantham from Northfleet. But Roger Mill nicely in control here, but still back at the front. It's Mark Farmer, Phil Borley in very close attendance indeed. Riding a very calculated race. I have to say that the last 2 laps, I think we might see some fireworks. And lap 11, we are on the total race distance, 15 laps. That is just under 30 miles. It passes very quickly, and the weather conditions here have been ideal. A good afternoon's racing.
Yeah, terrific racing here for the first round of the Supercup series. But Mark Farmer is tending to hold his advantage now. There is about half a second gap. And maybe he's picked his pace up. I saw as he came out of the S's there, he got the rear end of the bike sliding, so he's certainly trying hard. And he'll have had pit signals to say that he's being followed closely, so he might be upping his pace. And Phil Borley's unable to catch him. I don't know. We're going to have to wait till that last lap, I believe.
Well, Mark Farmer's had assistance by Belstaff. Those are the people who helped Rodney Knapp and Mike Edwards in the first year of the 600cc Supersport series, and they are the importers, in fact the sole UK distributors of Metzeler rubberware, so you can rest assured that Mark Farmer will be running Metzeler tyres on his Yamaha out in front, but tucked right in the slipstream, and there you see it, some 50 metres adrift is Phil Borley from Southend, who's doing his utmost in this, his 3rd year of Supersport series, to make the championship his. And I have to say that he's got a good chance of doing that with Reynolds out of the way, and Steve Ives, last year's runner-up, not featuring at all in this race, and I don't know the reason for that. We're endeavouring to find out, but he was allocated a 2nd row place in qualifying, and I have to admit that I didn't notice whether he took it up on the restart.
No, I didn't notice Steve Ives out there, so possibly he had a problem. but that gap is staying about the same, 0.4 of a second. In fact, no, definitely Borley is closer now. As we come to the 12th lap here, Phil Borley is closing on Farmer.
Well, they're riding right into the sun up the hill there, and that can't be easy. I don't know if they have a low glare visor, but it's very, very difficult driving into the sunlight. And the straight here, the start-finish straight up to Rich's Corner, is up a gradual incline, and the sun is disappearing fairly quickly behind us now. So they are getting it full in the face as they go over the line. That might make life a bit difficult, Steve.
Yes, it does. I think the majority of these riders probably will have fitted dark visors, but it's still a big problem to see your braking points, and especially if you're catching back markers. It's no different on a motorcycle on a racetrack than it did on the road. It's extremely difficult when the sun is very low.
Phil Borley drifting wide, but still has Mark Farmer firmly in his sights, and the race really, within this race, if you know what I mean, has been about the first and second place, because once Borley got into the second place position, it was really a question of would he ever get the lead, and that question still exists. Can he do something in this is, well, what is really the dying stages of this race, just to steal victory from under the nose of Mark Farmer? That remains to be seen. I've got a sneaking feeling he's got nothing left.
Yeah, there's very little. I mean, the bikes are identical, so it certainly won't be down to machinery. It could be down to the difference in tyres. Now, hang on, Borley's out, I think. Phil Borley's got his hand in the air, he's got a problem.
Well, that's a real upset for Phil Borley, because I was about to say that he's hoping against hope that someone will offer him a 750cc ride during this season based on his 600 performances, but the red flag is out here at the start-finish. The red flag is out, so there is obviously an incident, and with the race so deeply run, I make a commitment that the result will stand at the end of the lap prior to the stoppage. The 600 race stopped after 13 laps due to the incident involving number 29, Phil Grantham, who incidentally has sustained ankle injuries. A convincing win, however, after 13 laps for number 9, Mark Farmer, pursued closely by Phil Borley.